Yo, bit of a different one. I've got to record this from home at 11 o'clock at night because I forgot a video. But color grading, let's go. Get your clip in the timeline. First step, quite simple. Head over to the color tab and you want to create 4 nodes. Now, if you want the shortcut in the little video I made for Davinci tricks, head up to the Davinci panel, go to keyboard and set it to whatever you want. It's called node. It's adding a serial node, so you can either right click and add a serial node, or you can change the key to whatever you want. I've set mine to N because, well, node. Anyway, let's move on. So I'm renaming them just for the pace of a video, but you can, for the point of the video, but you can do that as well if you want. So the first node is primary, and then there's H versus H or S, because that's hue versus hue and also hue versus saturation. And the last one is the light, because we're going to be playing with a little bit of light, but you don't necessarily have to. Now, the middle one, you want to search for color space, transform. Now, only do this if you shot in RAW, really, because it basically sets just a LUT on your footage. But if you haven't shot in RAW, just ignore this step. If you have, find the settings that suit your raw footage. So for me, it was the ARRI camera, so I just selected one of the gamuts that fit best, and then we shot in Rec 709, I'm pretty sure, and so that's how I set it. And then once you've done that, you can head into your primary tab, and in the bottom left hand corner you have all these little primaries. There's lift, gamma, gain, offset, and you're going to be messing with the gamma and the gain until you basically get the look that you want when it comes to brightness. Now, usually the rule of thumb would be in the scopes and the waveform in the bottom right, you will set the very peak as the very top of a 1023 and the very negative value as 0, but that doesn't work for mine, and so I will not be doing that. Instead, mine peak is about 768, so I have 0 and then 768, and that's where I set my peak to be. You also want to adjust your contrast. Now, it's quite good to go too far and then kind of dial it back to see whatever suits your eyes. And then the pivot option, which I also play with, basically just sets, I don't really know what pivot does, to be completely honest. I just know that I've got to use it, and you can see what it's doing in the waveform. It's just kind of going up and down. But I mean, with color grading, you can kind of just mess around and see whatever fits your footage best, because it all depends on your footage. And now you want to head over to your H versus H / S node and go over to this little tab here and make sure it's on hue versus hue. You can change it along these little options at the top. So that's hue versus saturation, that's hue versus hue, and then you can select a piece of the person's skin. Now, this works with people. You do not need to do this step if it is not a person. If it's not a person, I don't know what you do. Just don't do this step, because there's no skin if it's a tree. So yeah. But with a person, you want to select the skin tone and adjust it slightly, because human skin is reddish pink. I know it looks white, but it's reddish pink, so obviously, blood vessels are red. And so you want to up it slightly in the red section until a little bit of red comes out. You can hardly even see a difference, to be honest, but her cheeks are a bit blushy, so it kind of makes them stand out a little bit more. And then you want to head over to the hue versus saturation tab. It kind of looks like a little cobweb. And then with this one, this is where I love this little thing. I think this was actually new to the 18 update or something, but you can select any color and move your mouse around. Just experiment with it. You can move your mouse around. You can adjust the saturation or the brightness as well as the hue and everything just from moving your mouse around. So again, on the skin tone, we're going to do this and adjust it a little bit more into the reds, just to make the skin look a bit more realistic, so it's not, ghost-like. So she actually looks like she's been eating throughout her life. And then for this footage in particular, I've got some blue in the background, and so I'm going to go back over to the curves tab and change it to hue versus saturation and mess with the blues a little bit after selecting the blue background, just to make the blues come back to life a bit more, because they were kind of dead. And so that's basically the color section done. Now, the last thing we're going to do, because a lot of color grading is playing with, the color, but it's also very important for us to play with the light. This doesn't really work with my footage because it's indoors and we blocked all the windows off. But say you were shooting next to a window, if it's a commercial or if it's just a clip in the film, then you might want to use this to even the light out a little bit. And so under the light tab, we're going to head over to the mask section. So it's the 4th little tab along, and scroll all the way down and select whatever that's called. I want to say it's like a linear white thing. I don't know. It's that option, all right? You just select that one. And you want to basically place this on the opposite side of a face. So I actually did it wrong here. So let's correct that. There we go. That's a bit better. Move that to the opposite side of where the light is actually coming from. So the majority of the light is coming from that side. Sorry, no, put it on the same side the light's coming from. The majority of the light is coming from that side. And so that side of a face is already brighter than the other side. But to even it out, again, if you're next to a window or something where that side of the face is going to be really bright, you would put this setting, this thing on the side where the window is, and then decrease your gain to make it a little bit darker, so the window isn't blowing everything else out and making everything over the top bright. So you would just make it a little bit darker. That's way too much. That's a bit better. A little bit darker, just to even the light out a bit more. Again, it doesn't really work for my footage, but it might for yours if you're next to a window or outdoors. But that is basically it. So you go from this sort of look with raw footage to then this, and it's like magic.